everyone, Jodey with the Ring Lord here. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 3 of our Beginner Weave series, Slow Worm. We recently did a mail along, and when we started putting the top rings on the weave to make Slow Worm, there was some confusion as to how to add the rings. So I looked into it further, and from what I can tell, the way I was showing it is either a variant of Slow Worm or a completely different weave. I'm going to contact mail artisans and see if I can clear that up. I did look through the Persian weave family and didn't see anything exactly like this. So maybe it's a variant, maybe it's a new weave, but I will submit it and see what they say. So I went ahead and made a slow worm video just to clear up any confusion. So I'm not going to be posting the recording of the mail along just because I want to keep things clear. This video will also go over how to make Half Persian 3-in-1 in the regular lean and then in the opposite lean. Rings I'm using are saw cut anodized aluminum matte finish in red. They are 16 gauge, SWG 5/16 of an inch internal diameter. Aspect ratio about 5.2. This aspect ratio, if you are only making Half Persian 3-in-1 without the slow worm rings on top, is too large. It will flop and it is a little more difficult to make. So if this is your first time making Half Persian 3-in-1, I suggest using an aspect ratio of around 4.1. So 16 gauge 1/4 inch, 18 gauge 3/16, 19 gauge 5/32, etc. So when I make Half Persian 3-in-1, I take one open ring and add 2 closed rings. Close the open ring. I lay it down on my work surface. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. There we go. So you have your ring that you closed and your 2 closed rings that you added. You want to turn these 2 rings toward each other. And you want the right ring to go over the left ring. So if it's like this, you're simply turning it flat and turning this one flat over it. I'm going to put it down so you can see what it looks like. So you will have this ring, the one that was open is now a vertical ring. In a perfect world, it would be sitting up, but the aspect ratio is too big. And then you have this eye shape formed by these 2 closed rings sitting over top of one another. So this is also the trick of how you make opposite leaning Half Persian 3-in-1. It is dependent upon the way you stack the rings at the beginning. So we stacked right over left. If we had stacked left over right, we would be making opposite leaning Half Persian 3-in-1. So grab an open ring, grab a closed ring on it. Now you can, because we're going to be working with these 2 rings, you can put a piece of tape around this to help it stay put, because until you get about the 3rd or 4th ring into this, if you pick it up, it's just going to be a mess. So when I make Half Persian 3-in-1, I have it sitting on my work surface. And basically what I do is I just put my thumb down over this so it can't move. And I wiggle this ring into the eye. Oops. So you see that this open ring is now in the eye of the 2 rings that we originally added. So I'm going to close it. Notice I'm still doing everything sitting on my work surface. Half Persian 3-in-1 stacks in 2 ways. It stacks with the vertical rings and it stacks with the horizontal rings. So when you add your rings, you want to make sure that the vertical ring, that would be the open ring that you use to scoop up the closed ring, stacks in front of the previous ring, And right over left, because that's the way we stacked our horizontal rings, you need to make sure the closed ring you added sits on top of the previous rings. So this is what it'll look like. This is a vertical ring, and these are your horizontals. And again, it's going to look a little bit like a mess right now until you get the third or fourth ring in. So I'm going to grab an open ring, put a closed ring on it, and again, I'm just going to put my thumb over these so that they can't move. And I'm going through the second ring. I'm going through the eye of the second and third rings. If you can't get right up through the eye, it's okay to go through one ring like I'm showing, and then just slip the other ring on top of it. Maybe. There we go. Close it. Okay. Now, this ring didn't stack properly on its own, so you're going to have to move it. So you just pop it over on top of the other horizontal rings. So you now have 3 vertical rings and 4 horizontal rings. So I'm going to put one more in. So open ring, grab a closed ring. You may not really have to hold it down at this point, but I'm going to slide through the third closed ring and the fourth closed ring. Okay, and close it. And now I'm going to stack that ring. And now you should be able to pick it up. So I'm going to show you how to weave it when it's not on the workbench. So open a ring, grab a closed ring. I pretty much do the same thing. I still hold the rings down just because it makes it easier. So you're always working on the end with the loose ring, and you can just barely see that eye under my thumb. So I'm coming up through the eye, and now I can let this go because it's not going to be a mess when I pick it up. Close the ring, and then because this is right over left, we need to add, or not add, we need to move this ring so it stacks on top of the previous ring. And if it moves, it's fine. When you're ready to pick up your next ring, you'll just put it back in place. So I'm going to set this down so you guys can see what this looks like. And I'm going to add some more rings because I want a nice length to show you how to make slow worm. So I'm just going to quickly weave this. And what I would normally do is I would have some rings open. Half Persian 3-in-1 is half of the rings are open and half of the rings are closed. So if you like to weave with open and closed rings, you can take that into account. I will have weave information such as ring count and sizes during the video or at the end. Okay, so I'm just weaving through the eye, moving my rings so that that one stacks. Moving it so it stacks. Now see how this is just hanging off? That's fine. I can actually go through this ring and then move this ring around to sit over the open ring. That is totally fine. And once you get a nice length of HP 3-in-1, you will see that there is a definite top and bottom to this weave, and I will show you in a minute. Let's get a little bit more woven. Half Persian 3-in-1 is a great weave to use to wrap flat things and maybe some cabochon type stuff because it has a valley on one side. And let me read these last three and I will show you. And I'll also show you real quick how to end it. Alright, so if this is the length that we wanted, we would have this one, let me get it in place. We would have this one ring right here flipping around. So we would take an open ring and simply stack the ring and then just place this ring, through the eye of those last two rings. You have to open the ring enough to get it in there. So you just take the ring, make sure that it is stacked in the right place, and voila. That's how you end Half Persian 3-in-1. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show you the valley. Like, I don't know that you'll be able to see it on video, but if you run your fingers through the top of this weave, you can feel the valley. It's between these two rings. And then if you flip it over, you get this really cool, like, twisty kind of shape on the back. So if you had made a slow worm, this is the back of it. This one actually probably shows the shape a little bit better because it's delineated by the color. And then this would be the top of slow worm. So we have these rings sitting in the valley or on top of the valley. Okay, so we have made our length of Half Persian 3-in-1, and I have not noticed a great deal of shrinkage when you add the top rings. So pretty much if this is the length that you want for your piece, then you shouldn't have to add more of the base weave of Half Persian 3-in-1 when you're making slow worm. So let's make slow worm. Alright, so the small rings I'm using are 16 gauge 7/32, and all of these rings will be open. So if you want to go ahead and open all of them, you can do that. There's two ways you can do this. They're the same, but there's a method, two methods I guess you can use. One method would be to add all of the small rings down one side and then go back and add the small rings to the other side. The other method is to add one ring on one side and another ring on the other side at the same time. So I'm just going to show you the first method. Go all the way down and then add them back on the other side. So you need to make sure that your weave is face up. So that means there's a little bit of a valley. Maybe you can't see it. See, there's a little bit of a valley. So if you were going to wrap something with this, that's where you would sit your thing that you're going to wrap into that valley, and then it would just curl around it. Alright, so it doesn't matter which end you start with. I'm just going to start with this end. So you're going to come up through, you're going to come up through the last ring on the side closest to you, and you will go down through its next door neighbor. So you're literally just scooping through the rings, okay? So scoop up and scoop down through its neighbor and close the ring. Okay, and so it will look like that. And these rings do not intertwine when you are adding them down the side, so they are distinct and discrete from one another. So up through the first ring, scoop around, and go down through the next door neighbor. So they will be sitting like that. So I am just going to add rings down this side. So other ring sizes you could use for this weave, and there is a post on Facebook showing the front and back of this weave along with ring sizes and ring counts, estimated ring counts. So you could look there as well. Like I said, I will include that information somewhere in this video. I'm just going to add a couple more. So you can see this is just not hard. You just add the rings to the top, around, up through one ring, up through one ring, down through the next. Okay, so let's pretend that we had gone all the way down and now we're done with that. To add rings to the other side is very similar. You are going to come up through a large ring closest to you, on the side closest to you, and you are going to, actually let me start with this one. So large ring closest to you, you just go straight up through the small ring that's across from it, and you scoop down through the large neighbor of the first ring you started with. Okay? So you're kind of mirroring the intertwined rings here with the small rings. So let's do that again. And again, these small rings, they only go through the ring across from them. They don't go through neighbor rings. So they go up through a large ring, up through a small ring, and down through the next door neighbor of the large ring you started with. Right. So I'm just going to keep going up through a large ring, straight up through a small ring, down and around through the neighbor large ring. Okay. So the way I was teaching it was you would go up through a large ring, over, let me go through a different one, up through the large ring and over the small ring, and then down through the neighbor ring. But that's not correct. So if you're doing that, that's not the way this weave works. That's a different weave, and it will make the rings layer differently. Again, I don't know if it's a new weave. I'm going to submit it to mail and see what they say. I have looked and did not see anything specifically like this, but it's hard to tell because some of the weaves you can't see the side, and that's really where the difference is on this. So just make sure that you're going straight up through the small ring and not around the small ring. So large ring, I'm just on my way scooping around. I'm just going straight up through that small ring and down through the next large ring. So I'm going to quickly finish this, and then I'm going to quickly show you opposite leading half Persian 3-in-1. And this can be a little challenging to get to close the small ring, so you may need to get a little creative with your plier placement. These Tronex pliers work really nicely because they do have such a thin jaw at the end. And one more ring. And we're done. So that is what slow worm looks like. And I have something wrong here. You can see also that slow worm stacks. Oh, they popped into place. It looked like I had something wrong here, but I didn't. They were just standing up funny. So when I moved it, they fell into place. You can also make sure you're doing it right by looking at how it stacks on the side and how it stacks on this side. All right, so let's quickly look at Half Persian 3-in-1 stacking the opposite direction. So close a few rings. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing as how we started before. You're going to take one open ring and grab two closed rings, close the ring. So last time we stacked, now remember, you want them hanging like that, and then they turn towards each other. Okay, this time, instead of going right over left, we're going to go left over right. Okay, so my left hand ring is on top of my right hand ring. Grab an open ring, put a closed ring on it, just one. And again, you're going to put your finger over it so it doesn't move. You're going to come up through the eye and close the ring. Same thing with this. Your vertical rings are going to stack. Your horizontal rings will stack. Last time your horizontal rings were stacking up. This is what we did last time. So our horizontal rings are stacking up like you're going upstairs. Your horizontal rings, when you go left over right, are stacking down like you're going downstairs. So if we continue this, grab an open ring, put a closed ring on it, put your finger over your piece, and you're going up through the eye formed by the last two horizontal rings. Close your ring. Now in left over right, the ring stacks automatically down because it's just how it places itself when you add it. Okay, and then after this, we'll be able to pick it up. So go through that eye, close the ring. Oh, well that one didn't stack. It depends on where you have it when you're placing it. Usually mine stack pretty well because the ring just sort of falls under the other one. But just make sure you're stacking properly. Okay. And my ring stacked properly, it's underneath. And I'm going to do one more. You can pick it up now if you want to. But you're still going through that eye. Close it. And then if you're done with your piece, you can just add this last string to secure those two floppy rings at the end. And you have just made opposite leaning Half Persian 3-in-1. So if you look at these, you will see that they stack in opposite directions. This is stacking down, depending on which way you look at it. See the rings stack under each other. And this one, the rings stack over each other. So if you're making our owl project, you will need to understand how to make opposite leaning half Persian 3-in-1, and that's how you do it. If you have any questions about this video or need help with the project or don't understand opposite leaning half Persian 3-in-1, feel free to send us an email, projecthelp@TheRingLord.com. If you have questions about an order or a product, please contact customer service directly at orders@TheRingLord.com. If you have any requests, send us an email at projecthelp. Otherwise, I hope this video has been useful, and have a great day.